نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. قال الله تعالى في شأن حبيبي إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا مولانا محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وعلى آله وصحبه دائما أبدا. صلاة وسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. Today, of course, is the 18th of Muharram, and we've been talking about Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And as Muinuddin Chishti rahmatullah alayhi said, that the foundation, or rather Imam Hussain alayhi salam in reality is the foundation of Islam. You look at his life, you look at what he did, what he sacrificed, how he fulfilled the commands of Allah, and how he stood up to the character of the Quran, or upheld the character of the Quran in everything he did, every aspect of his life. And of course, again, he is the blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he is the blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so everything he does, just like everything that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did and said was in accordance with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him to say and do. And everything that Imam Hussain alayhi salam did and said was in accordance with what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wants him to say and do. And this, for us, should not be very difficult to understand. If you look at the world today and you see all this oppression, you see all the violence, everywhere you see this, all the time. If you don't hear it every day, just simply doesn't mean it's not happening. And you look in the Muslim world, and there's more of it happening there than anywhere else. If there's going to be an atrocity somewhere, the people of that location will leave. If they know that it's coming, if they know that there's going to be some difficulty, what do? You leave. Or you don't go to a certain place. If I know that there's going to be a bombing or something in a certain place, I'm not going to go. I'm definitely not going to take my kids or anyone else from my family. And whoever I care for or love, I'll tell them, don't go here either. When we look at the actions of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, we see something totally different. And this gets back to that verse of Surah Kahf. أَمْ حَسِبْتَ أَنَّ أَصْحَابَ الْكَهْفِ وَالرَّقِيمِ كَانُوا مِنْ آيَاتِنَا عَجَبًا. That do you think that this story of the people of the cave and that inscription, that these are something strange. They did what anybody would have done. You have a tyrant king and they run away, seclude themselves so they can continue doing what they wish to do, which is to worship their Lord. So they're willing to sacrifice their freedoms and their comfort, because these were young men who were from a very affluent, or from very affluent families within society. So they're willing to give up all of that so that they can adhere to their religion. But they went away from the physical torture and punishment, whereas Imam Hussain al-Islam goes towards it. You look at his actions, we forget that everything he's doing, he knows what's going to come. But Rasulullah ﷺ had already told him. He had already told his father and his mother. And the hadiths are say, so he knows what's coming. But he also understands that the pleasure of Allah lies in this. And that the life of Islam depends upon this. And he's not simply willing to sacrifice himself, but he's willing to sacrifice everything that he loves. And those that are close and dear and near to him are willing to be sacrificed for this cause. In fact, are eager to be sacrificed for this cause. Because they understand that within this is the pleasure of Allah and His Messenger. They also understand the responsibility that is on their shoulders to uphold the message of Allah and His Messenger. There's a narration in Mustadrak, and for those who most of us, you hear Mustadrak, and we don't know what Mustadrak is. Mustadrak is a book of hadith compiled by Imam Hakim. And the hadiths within there are hadiths that are sahih according to the criteria of Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. So you have the same narrators as Bukhari and Muslim. And in there is a narration where Rasulullah ﷺ talks about a man who spends his whole life making salat and worshipping Allah in front of the Kaaba, fasting every day, and dying in a condition that he is in sajda, in salat. And yet Rasulullah ﷺ says that he will directly go to hell. Because within his heart is the animosity of Ahlul Bayt, the animosity of the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in another narration, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says more or less that those who die for the love of Ahlul Bayt, that they die, for the love of the household of Rasulullah, they die the death of a martyr. Which is interesting because, you look at those who truly loved Ahlul Bayt, who weren't from Ahlul Bayt but truly loved Ahlul Bayt. Umar bin Abdul Aziz, rahmatullah alayh. You know, he's from Banu Umayyah, but he's the exception to the rule. He is the one who stopped the cursing of Ali, which was part of the khutbah of Jummah. You know, for 90 years this went on. He's the one who put a stop to this. And in the end, what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifts him with martyrdom. His cousins poisoned him or had him poisoned so they could regain the kingdom. But again, he's a martyr. We look at Umar radiallahu himself. You know, Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi is a descendant of Umar radiallahu because Umar radiallah's son was married to, of course, a certain woman. They had a daughter. And then Umar bin Abdul Aziz is the son of that daughter. So he's the son of the granddaughter of Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar radiallahu made the statement what? That, oh Allah, do not allow me to see the day in which I am here but there is no Ali. And he says if it had not been for Ali, Umar would have been destroyed. When we talked about Umar, then we talked about his association with the Ahlul Bayt and how he treated them and honored them. And how he would make a dua that the companions thought was impossible. He would pray to Allah that, oh Allah, give me martyrdom, but give me martyrdom in Medina Munawwara. And he would make this dua publicly, and the people would say, this is an impossibility. You know, all the battles and all the wars, they're not here anymore. They're all outside now. How can this be? And when it came his time, what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifts him with martyrdom. Again, what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that the one who has the love of Ahlul Bayt, who dies on that love, he dies the death of a martyr. You know, the animosity to Ahlul Bayt doesn't mean that, oh, somebody is publicly talking against them or you know, using bad words for them. There are people like that, on that extreme. But the more dangerous ones are the ones who, you know, like we say, Gulabi Wahhabi. They're real nice. They talk really good. But they always inject that poison somewhere. You know, they talk about Ahlul Bayt and all this and there's like this. And then after a while, then you hear that but. Then you know, there's an issue here. See, another way to have animosity to Ahlul Bayt is to praise their enemies. That goes on a lot these days. Because they know if they start directly saying something against him, they'll get exposed. So, just praise the enemies. You know, if somebody says something against Yazid, don't talk about Yazid, you know, we don't. Why waste your time with Yazid? You know, because it hurts their heart. Or they talk about, you know, the kings as khalifas, like the rightful rulers. So, you know, the animosity that Ahlul Bayt takes many forms. You know, as we were talking about last week, and I kind of ended on this note last week. was that Imam Hussain al-Islam, he did what he did in order to protect and safeguard the soul of Islam against the shell. You know, it's like Sayyid Abdul Qadir Jilani rahmatullahi alayhi. You know, he said that the body, you know, is like a cage, and the soul is like the bird. If the bird dies, the cage has no use. I mean, the whole purpose of the cage is to hold the bird. If the cage is destroyed and the bird survives, there's still meaning there. There's significance, because that's the whole purpose. You know, the bird's flying around free. So he said the problem with us today is that we're dealing with the cage. You know, we want to shine the cage real nice, and we've forgotten the bird. So you're not feeding the bird, and you're shining the cage. What do we expect? If we look at the worship in Islam, everything has the physical form. Salat, fasting, zakat, hajj. But that's not the purpose. You know, a very simple example of this is in the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about fasting. It says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That all you believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you. Not so you stay hungry and thirsty. It's so you may attain taqwa. So if I stay hungry and thirsty without attaining taqwa, the fasting in reality has no meaning. Just like that man who Rasulullah spoke about, his whole life spent fasting and praying in front of the Kaaba, and yet when he dies, he goes directly to hell. Why? Because of the animosity to Ahlul Bayt. You know, it's sad to say, though, you know, the next step from here. I mean, if we look at, you know, again, these leaders and rulers and oppressors, rather, I won't say leaders and rulers, but the oppressors, they're not afraid of the shell, which is also why when you look at the army of Yazid, all of them were praying. Many of them were hafiz of Quran. 500 of them were fuqaha. Shimr used to lead Fajr Salat in the masjid. He didn't care. Allah is pure and accepts only that which is pure. The Rasulullah ﷺ told us this. So if the purpose for doing everything is not pure, it doesn't matter. The help of Allah only comes when that purity exists. If there's a minor shift here or there from the purity, you know, purity means what? 100%. 99.9% pure means it's impure. You know, it's interesting in organic chemistry. If you talk to an organic chemist, you know, he would much rather have a product that's initially 70% pure versus 99.9% pure. You know, like when they talk about chemical reactions, Because it's easier to purify that 70% to 100% than that 99.9 to 100%. Dealing that 0.1% is very difficult. Now you got to go through all these other processes to get to that 100%. You know, so that's why they don't care whether you're doing the shell. Because if that purity is not there, then the help of Allah does not come. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us this throughout history. Over and over and over again. And we keep ignoring it. The sadder part of all of this, though, is that today we don't even keep up with the shell. We want to claim to be the lovers and supporters of Imam Hussain al Islam. And when we look at Imam Hussain al Islam, you know, he made Fajr in the battlefield with his people. He made Dhuhr as Salat al-Khawf in the middle of the battle. And he made Asr when he was the only one left. With the wudu, you know, his Salat was Salatul Ishq. It is the prayer of love. The wudu of which he did with his own blood. Making sajda, knowing fully well what's going to happen. And we want to claim to love him and be on his side. And yet, you know, when time for Fajr comes, our sleep is more beloved to us than him. Time for Asr comes, and we're too busy with something else. He had every excuse not to make Asr. He had excuses not to make Dhuhr. He is showing to the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that if you claim to love Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then be willing to pay this price. You know, I mean, we claim, oh, you know, I love him and I this and that. Hypocrisy. You know, people say, oh, you know, if I'd been there. You know, unfortunately, when we look at most of us, if we'd been there, we would have been on the other side. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, that's why when you look at the world today, more huffaz than have ever been. More masajid than ever existed before. You know, I remember when we came to America in 1968, 1970s, no masjid in Atlanta area. None. And now there are places where within a mile radius you can find 2 or 3. And yet you look at the Muslim world, and we look at the Muslims here. What good are we? You know, in Yemen, a child dies every 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes. Who's killing them? Other than those who claim to be Muslim. We have left the way of Rasulullah. We have not just left his way, we have left him. We have left his family. We can't even go through the motions. And then we expect Allah to help us. The help of Allah has already come in the form of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has shown us the way. If we choose to go the opposite direction, then we should not expect the benefits of the company and the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So all of us have become insane, that we think, and even looking through history, we think that we can do something other than what is pleasing to Allah and His Messenger, and we're going to get some, that Allah will help us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also told us in the Quran that who He guides and who He doesn't guide. Time's running out. Inshallah, we have the program tomorrow night in honor of Imam Hussain al-Islam and the martyrs of Karbala. I'll make the announcement again after Salat, inshallah. This program starting at 6 o'clock. Please be here on time. Because the program's not going to last long. Usually we start at 6 and then, you know, the talk doesn't start till after Maghrib, and, you know, we'll have some recitation before. This one will be a lot quicker. The talk will be before Maghrib, inshallah. Talking about Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Again, the one for whom Rasulullah said, Al-Husaynu minni wa ana min al-Husayn. The Hussein is from me and I am from Al-Hussein. In another one, in narration, he says that Hussein is from me and I am from him. And Allah love whoever loves him. He is, of course, the embodiment of patience, the embodiment truly of Islam. If we expect to have any understanding of Islam, there is no way other than through him. I mean, that's the reality of it. And if somebody wants to challenge me on that, they can challenge me on it. So inshallah, we'll have that program tomorrow night. You know, everybody's welcome and invited, and there will be food afterwards, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our hearts with His true love, the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love, inshallah. Those who have not made sunnah, go and make sunnah, inshallah.